see everybody here. Tonight, we're going to be talking about Joseph's life in prison and pre-release, as well as his experience immediately following release. Now, I've got a whole series of questions here. It would take an awful long time if we bore down into each of these. So I've asked Joseph to sort of keep the comments somewhat, short, but targeted. And so with that, let me just jump in and everybody meet Joseph. So I know some of you do know him. So first, Joseph, thanks for being here. It's nice to see you.
You're welcome.
When did you get out of prison?
December 12th of 2019. So in 12 days, I'll be out for a whole year.
Okay, great. And how many years were you in prison in total?
36.
Got it. That's a long stretch of your life.
Yes.
And where are you living now?
I'm living in a transition home in Los Angeles.
Okay. So are you on parole or probation?
Yes, I'm on parole. They gave me 7 years parole.
Okay, got it. And how often do you meet up with your parole officer?
Twice a month. Usually he comes over to the house once, and then the other time he wants me to visit him in El Monte.
Okay. Can you kind of describe a little bit about what it's like to be on parole? What do you have to do? What are the rules, the regulations? You have terms, that kind of thing?
Yeah. Well, in this transition home, like over the weekend, over the holiday weekend, they drug tested us, But I'm happy to give them a drug test because I know I'm always clean. So, and it reflects good on everybody. And so the other thing is I can't leave within a 50-mile radius of the house. I can go 50 miles any way, and I have to meet my parole agent twice a month. Mm-hmm. And it's really not a whole lot of those are mainly just the main restrictions. Parole is not really as invasive as it used to be.
Right. Why do you think that is? What's happened? Something's loosened it up.
Yeah, because there's been a lot of prisoners' rights groups, a lot of organizations that have been advocating to pass for better, more just criminal laws.
Right.
And
just in case you don't know, I'm talking to the group here. In California, we have 44,000 laws that pertain to parole and probation. So it is so easy for people to trip up and go back to prison. And I think Joseph would say yes to that. About 30 some odd % of the people here in California are in prison or jail right now because of a parole violation.
Could I say something about that, David?
Oh.
I just learned today.
Yeah.
When I went to the ARC building, the president of the ARC, he did like 26 years, and now he runs this big organization. But he was telling me, that when he was in prison, the population was 187,000 in California. That was the highest. And now he told me today that it's at 91,000. So they've cut the population in half just from all this advocacy. And I didn't know that. I knew it was getting lower, but I didn't know it had gotten that lower. And he says next year they're even talking about closing down another prison, which is the one in Tracy, California. And so that was very interesting because when I was in prison, I was always hoping to see a day when they would actually close down prisons, but they had always put prisons forth as a big opportunity for work opportunities for a whole community. When a community got a prison, the whole community got jobs in the prison, so, but I always thought that was kind of unfair,
Right.
Yeah.
There are about, I think, 600,000 people that are out of prison in California that are on parole or probation. So it's a pretty staggering number. Let's kind of go back to the early days prior to prison, and if you don't mind, what was your family life like?
Well, my mom already had 7 kids by the time she was 25. And so, she had to raise us all by herself, because we didn't have our dad. She had split from my dad. And so she raised all 7 of us by herself. So she had problems with discipline or teaching discipline. Well, she was a kid herself raising all these kids, I kind of realized later on. So I couldn't really expect her to be mother, father, disciplinarian, genius, guru, and all these other things. So I kind of felt bad for him. Sometimes when I think I could have been a better son sometimes, to help her out. Yeah. So because we didn't have, because I had 4 brothers and 2 sisters, and because we didn't have male role models or positive role models or any kind of mentors to tell us don't do this or don't do that. I was just telling my brother the other day, it's no wonder that as early as 10, 11, 12, we were already criminals, because we didn't have that guidance to tell us right from wrong.
Yeah.
We were poor. Well, you can tell my mom. You can understand that a mother raising 7 kids by herself. She's not going to have the money to raise us, so we were poor, and we just, she tried the best she could, and we know that I know that she loved me, and I loved her, but the funny thing is, when I got out, my little sister told me that my mom had her whole life that my mom had never told her that she loved her, And I was surprised to hear that, because me and my mom had a pretty good relationship.
What were the circumstances that led to your becoming arrested and serving time in prison?
Well, because I joined the gang. I know
it's a long story, so if you could compact it.
Yeah, I joined a gang, and the funny thing about when I joined the gang, I didn't really want to join the gang. I was just there at the wrong place at the wrong time. And they asked me if I wanted to be from the gang. And I knew either way I was going to get jumped that night. So I said, yeah. But after I got jumped into the gang and people knew I was from the gang, I had this instant celebrity and status and acceptance and importance that I had never had before. Friends that, acted like they cared about me. And so I kind of liked that instant fame, but even then I didn't really want to go there all the time because every time I went there, I would just get in trouble, and I didn't want to get in trouble. So it was like a conflict I was going through. But then I actually did, one night I just got in trouble, and that's what resulted in 36 years of prison.
Right. Well, that's a long stretch. Like I said,
how old were you, Joseph, when that happened?
16. Yeah, I went in at 16 and I got out at 53.
So at 16, did you go into a state prison or did you go into juvenile detention?
Yeah, I got tried as an adult. So I went to, they had a section in the county jail, in the LA County Jail for juveniles. And as soon as I turned 18, I went to the regular county jail.
Right.
And shortly after that, I was 18 when I got to prison.
Wow. How many prisons here in the state of California do you think you've been in?
In between maybe 7 and 10, somewhere around there.
Do they kind of just move you when they want to, or how does that happen that you got moved around 7 times in that lifespan?
Yeah, well, in December of 1985, I went to Folsom, And at that time, I stayed at Folsom. When I went to Folsom, there were big old race wars. There were like violent race wars going on at that time, you know.
Mhm.
And so when I had got there and I was 18 years old, I was only there for 4 months. And I went to the classification committee and they said, "You're too young to be here. You know, we're going to override you and send you to another prison." So that's what they did. From Folsom, I went to Tracy. I was there for a couple of years, and then somebody got murdered on the yard in Tracy, you know, and somebody said that I had something to do with it. I had absolutely nothing to do with it, but my friend did, you know. So because of association, I have to, you know, they sent me to the hole for that, and that's the beginning of them acting like I had more influence than I really did, you know.
Mhm. Yeah. What is the hole, just so people know?
It's solitary confinement. Yeah.
And can you describe, just so people understand, what is the actual cell dimensions and what's it like to live in solitary confinement, and how long were you confined in solitary confinement?
Well, the first time I went to solitary confinement was in 1990, and I was in solitary for 11 years, and then they let me out.
Whoa. 11 years.
Yeah.
So how
Yeah.
big is that cell again?
It's about as we used to tell people, just think about it as big as your bathroom, you know, and put bunk beds inside your bathroom, and you got a little toilet right there and a sink on the toilet, and that's as big as that's the big as a cell is. And it's most of the time it's you and a cellmate, but after a while it began to be just single cell.
Got it. What's that like, being by yourself for 23 hours a day?
Yeah. Well, where I was at in Pelican Bay, where I was at, the front of the cell, it was mesh. So you wasn't closed in wall, it was mesh. So there was 4 cells on top and 4 cells on bottom. So because it was like that, you could easily talk to anybody in the other 7 cells. You know, you could be sitting on your bunk and just having a conversation with the other inmates there. Or sometimes we would have like a group conversation. We would all just be talking about, basically nothing, making jokes or something, you know. Or we talked about food a lot, you know, because we were always hungry. Yeah.
What do you think it was that allowed you to get through that experience of being in solitary? Because you had told me at one point you had spent a total of 21 years in solitary confinement, which is to me unbelievable.
I did like 11 years twice. I did 11 and they let me out to the main line for 2 years, and then they brought me back, you know, saying that I was associating with a certain group of people, and because I was associating with a certain group of people, I was, you know, deemed dangerous to the security of the institution. So I needed to be in solitary, but they don't even have solitary like that anymore. They shut it all down.
Yeah. Wow. It's hard. It's kind of hard to imagine what it would be like. And I was just kind of wondering what you thought about, you know, mentally to keep yourself, physically to keep yourself active. You know, what did you do? What did you have to go through in order to survive 22 years of solitary?
Well, I very early on, I started reading a bunch of literature. Well, I used to like watching PBS, and I ran into I started watching Joseph Campbell on PBS, and then on the video channel at the prison, they were showing some Joseph Campbell videos and interviews and stuff, and little lectures that he was giving, and he would talk about a whole wealth of spiritual traditions all across the whole world, you know. So I started reading about him, and I started reading about, you know, Buddhism, Hinduism, Zen, Taoism, even Christianity, what do you call it? The mystical traditions of Christianity. And one thing he always used to say is that all across the world, all the stories across the world, they're all saying the same thing. You can see they all have the same stories, you know. They got different names for the characters, but they're the same stories. And so he was like saying, and then he would talk about the psychologists like Carl Jung and Freud, and he was just, because he was a professor for 38 years, you know, so he was just a wealth of knowledge, you know. And then after a while, I started coming across the idea that there was a part of us that was eternal, you know, and I'm like, wow, at first I was thinking, I hope that's true, because after a while, I used to tell myself, well, I already messed up this life. I'm preparing for the next one, you know, let me prepare myself. Let me prepare myself in case an opportunity happens in this lifetime. But I realized that eventually I have to be, I know a new character, and being a good person was important. And I had to strive to do that, you know, and I had all these scriptures that were telling me from different traditions the same thing about love and truth. And then when I come to Christian Science, it's the same thing, love and truth. And I'm like, oh, wow, everybody says that, you know?
I got a question about how your spirituality, if you will, went over in prison. How did other inmates take to that idea?
Well, you have to kind of like, I would kind of, to talk to somebody about it, I would kind of disguise it in terms of ways that they knew, you know, certain things that they knew were probably true and they can agree on it, you know, and then you would say, well, that's what that comes from the Bible, or that comes from this tradition. Yeah, so I couldn't really, like, when I got out back to the general population, and we started going to a lot of groups, like NA groups, and some of them, the 12 steps of NA is kind of like spiritually based too, because they got some steps that talks about God. Mm-hmm. And nobody knew how to talk about God. Because when the idea of God came up, we all thought about it. Everybody thought about it. Oh, that guy's getting weak. He's turning religious, you know? Mm-hmm. So it was hard to talk about God. But the more we went to the groups, the more people were able to talk about God. And the more we realized how much we had in common. And you could also tell the more people were reading in their cells certain books, but they felt that they didn't have anybody that they could talk to it about, because they wouldn't understand, or they would judge you, you know?
Yeah. Let me ask you, how did you discover or come across Christian Science when you were in prison? How did that happen?
Well, I've seen Mary Baker Eddy quotes as early as probably the early 90s, but I never read the book Science and Health. And we used to get the Christian Science Monitor when it was in the newspaper form, and I would read those sometimes, and the little part in the back sometimes. But I never had the book until 2016. Somebody one of the porters was walking across the tier with a bunch of books, and I told him, hey, what are you gonna do with them books? And he was gonna throw them away. And so one of them was Science and Health. So he said, yeah, take whatever you want. So I kept the Science and Health, and I started reading it. And when I read something, I want more of it. If I read something and I like it, I want to read something else about it, you know, like to help me understand it a little bit better, you know. Right. So I even read Mary Baker Eddy's, when I went to the chapel, and they had a copy of one of Mary Baker Eddy's biographies, you know. So, and then I always felt I don't know if it's somewhere in there, but I think I came to the conclusion too. I was thinking only a woman could have wrote Science and Health, because most of the men I've known were not that sensitive to write something like that, you know? That's funny.
Are you kidding? We're sensitive. So how did you meet with a Christian Science chaplain? I mean, I know you did. I know you met with somebody. How did that come about?
Yeah. Well, I saw one of my friends coming out of the building all dressed up, and he's never dressed up. And I said, where are you going? He says, I'm going to a Christian Science meeting. And I didn't know they had Christian Science, but I had already, they would just, it had been a few months since I had gotten a Science and Health. So I said, oh yeah, tell her to put me on the list so I can go in there. She, Miss Lambert, she used to come in every 2 weeks, you know? So I started going over there, and we would just read the Bible lesson. We would usually it was about, I think at the most we had about 8 to 10 people that went sometimes. And yeah, so that was fun.
So you weren't just going to get out of your cell.
No. I would ask, you know, yeah, I always got questions. Well, because you read when you read the Science and Health, they can't help but to raise a bunch of questions. You know, you read them and you say, well, if that's true right there, wouldn't that mean this is true also? Or it just raises other, like, I don't know the word for it, but yeah, it just raises
questions that raise questions.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me ask you this: what is it about the theology that you like, or that speaks to you?
Well, probably love and truth again. Truth, because like truth is good, because I always felt like is there something that's true that we know absolutely with certainty that's true, you know? And that's what, because my life there didn't make no sense, you know? Is that what life is all about? It's just we live for a certain amount of years, and then we die, and then we're just never heard from again. But when you start reading the scriptures, you start understanding that, oh, we're talking about another level. Like with Christian Science, they mention metaphysics, you know. So we're talking about another level that's above the level that we normally lived our life, you know. And it's almost like a philosophical level. It's just a different level of understanding and knowledge, and you know, you got this feeling that it's true. And then with Christian Science, the word that always came to me was well, we can demonstrate it. And I says, oh, you can demonstrate it, huh? I haven't known very many people so far that can demonstrate it. You know, how do you demonstrate it, you know? So that's what caught me on. And I'm still like, and so people say, Miss Lambert is telling me, well, you demonstrate it by the way you are every day. You know, you know how to be a good person. And when you do that, you're demonstrating, you know? And I'm, okay, can I go deeper? Can I demonstrate more?
Yeah.
Like the story you told me, like that was demonstration. I mean, I didn't see it, but you seen it, and you felt it, and I would think all of us, I would think all of us would aspire to be able to demonstrate in that way, you know?
I think most people do. I think that's sort of like a daily thing. You know? Have you had a chance, now that you're out, have you had a chance to go to a church or be involved in church or talk to anybody from a church?
Well, I was talking to Sharon, but I haven't talked to her in a while, but I'm going to call her. I'm going to call her pretty soon here. But Carlos hooked me up with his church. And so I did the church on Sunday morning, and then we did the Thanksgiving meeting. And tomorrow, I think he wants me to do it, but I'm not sure I'm going to be able to go tomorrow because I got to do a college Zoom tomorrow.
Okay. You're talking about an online
the Zoom meetings.
Yeah.
But I haven't been to a church yet.
Okay.
But when I was
none of us have.
When I moved to another prison, and I was still writing to Chaplain Lambert. At that time, they allowed us to write to the chaplains, but they don't allow us to write to the chaplains anymore.
Right.
But since we used to have we used to write good letters back and forth. And she saw that I was sincere about improving my spirituality. So she offered to nominate me or recommend me for to be a member of the mother church. And so I went through that process.
Are you a member?
Yes.
You're in.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
But
cool. That's great. You know, we're kind of getting to the end of our time, but I got just a couple little questions I want to ask you, which I know you could talk about in depth. So what were the key decisions that you made when you were on the inside that you knew would keep you from returning to prison once you came out?
Oh yeah. Well, I like that little part in Science and Health where Mary Baker Eddy uses the General Grant's little statement where he says, "We're going to draw the line right here, and we're going to fight here if it takes all summer," you know. And so that's when I said too, you know what, Joe, you can't be straddling the fence. You can't just be saying, "Oh, you're going to be good," but then your ego or your acceptance from others allows you to go the other side of the fence and do bad just for a minute, just to gain that acceptance and that adoration or praise or whatever it is. And I found out that one of my teachers taught me that one of the biggest sins is people pleasing, you know. And why do we people please? It's because we don't understand who we really are. If we understood who we were, we wouldn't be trying to please others, you know? And my teacher used to always say too, that God is pleased with you when you're pleased with yourself. And I'm like, yeah, you know, so I learned all these little lessons and they're true for me. And I know they're true, absolutely. And I don't question them. And so that's what I finally did when I says, I'm going to draw the line right here between good and good and bad, right and wrong, and all these pairs of opposites, you know, positive, negative, and I'm not going to go to that side anymore because I know what I get from that side. I just get misery and weakness and all this stuff that I don't want, you know.
So you dealt with your triggers somehow.
Yeah, one of my biggest triggers was you know, wanting the acceptance of others, you know, and I remember one day walking the track on the yard, and I was thinking to myself, because I was talking to somebody earlier, and what was coming out of my mouth was that old criminal mentality, and I realized that I was only saying that for acceptance, you know, and I thought I was getting over that, and I'm telling myself, why did you say that to that guy when you didn't even believe what you told him, you know? And it says, yeah, that's an example where I'm still trying to gain acceptance of others, and I'll even engage in criminality to get that acceptance, you know. And that's not something I want to do. You have to, you have to that you know the path, and you have to walk the path, and you know what happens when you get off the path, you know. And if you get off the path, get right back on, you know.
So it sounds like you have goals. Otherwise, you would be off the rails. It sounds like to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
What would be in ending this interview? What do you think is your most primary goals right now? What would they be?
Well, today, one of the guys reminded me today that like what you're doing, it's kind of funny because he says he asked us. He said, one thing I want you guys to do is like whenever try to help others, you know, whenever somebody's getting out of prison, do something for them or try to help them because they're in the same, you guys were in that same spot as at one point, you know? He's telling me always try to help somebody, but then at the same time too, other goals are I want to get a better car so I can get to work, you know, get here and there from work, you know. And then just last week I had this crazy idea about buying a house. And I'm like, where am I going to get the money to buy a house? I don't know, but it's a good goal to have.
Those are crazy good ideas, yes.
Are you working now, Joseph?
Yeah, well, I was going to, because of the COVID, I would these transition homes, they didn't want us going out too much. So right. I enrolled 1 year in community college, but I'm finding that I don't really like community college because being stuck to the laptop is making me feel like I'm confined because I've been
Yes.
studying and reading my whole life, and now that I'm out here, I'm studying and reading again, but it's confining me to the laptop, and I feel like I need to go out and do something physical and move and do something that's productive.
Yes.
And so I am working part-time at this place called Chrysalis. We follow California transportation around, and we help clean up the on-ramps and the off-ramps of the freeways. But today I went to ARC, and I'm probably going to join a construction cohort to where I get 12 weeks training in all the different construction trades, and then after that 12 weeks, the organization they help me get into the union, so they help me get a union job. And they're saying they're at cohort 11. The previous 10 cohorts have been pretty successful. A lot of the guys right there are doing real good now.
How long do you have in the temporary housing that you're in?
Well, I have here until March because I got a 90-day extension. And when I was talking to the ARC today, they have housing options too.
Oh, that's great.
So when I finish here, they can give me housing. And he was telling me about another guy that they have. There's a lot of there's quite a bit of resources, and they told me today too, that you know what? As long as you're on parole, you should take advantage of the free stuff, because you only get them while you're on parole.
Yeah.
Once you're off parole, you have to do everything yourself.
Yeah.
What is the free stuff you're talking about, Joseph? Well, like housing, mainly housing, but schooling. Schooling's almost free for anybody now. Schooling, but training, job training. There's other places that'll give monetary resources. Okay. They'll give little grants. One of the guys at ARC, they told me that we had a program right here that if you really need it, we'll give you. There is a program. We'll give you $2,100. To help you out. I never asked him for it, but it's good to know it's there if I really needed it. Yeah.
Folks, it's 6:40 our time, and we're going to open this up right now to. Well, Jeff, you already broke the dam open. So, questions from the audience. If you've got any questions for Joseph.
Yeah, let's go. Pat, you raised your hand first.
Thanks, Gabriel.
Next.
I'm particularly interested, Joseph. You have such a compelling story, and you're saying it so well. I have every helpful thought that you're going to be just fine. I'm very interested, though, to know what your response was, what your feelings were when you first got out of prison. It sounds like you might have had a high school education. Did you get that in prison? GED in prison.
I was having I still need just one class to get an associate's degree.
Good. Yeah. That'll be wonderful. But you had some education. You didn't have any shelter like you had for 20 or 30 years of your life. You had no income that you could really plan on, as far as I understand. You didn't know where you would live. How much help was the system at all in guiding you to employment and guiding you to a place to live? To me, those are such critical areas that I think we don't address well enough here and possibly not there.
Yeah, well, I think it was in 2005, the California Department of Corrections, they added rehabilitation to its name, So somebody in the state capitol decided, you know what, we've been just locking them up and throwing away the key attitude and being tough on crime attitude, and it's not getting us nothing. We're letting 50,000 people out a year, and those same 50,000 people are coming back because they don't know what to do when they get out. So
how did you deal with that?
When I got out?
Yes. How did you deal with that?
Well, I made up my mind when I was already in there that when I get out, I'm not coming back, because I'm not going to engage in any risky behavior whatsoever to come back.
How did you find your shelter?
Where I live at right now. Well,
Yes.
before I got out, because I was a lifer, I have to go before the parole board with parole plans, and I have to convince the board that I'm suitable. They use the term suitable, that I'm suitable to get out on parole, and to be suitable, you have to be, they have all this stuff that they make you go through. They want you to take all these classes. They want to know why you committed the crime. What is it about you that made you do it? And so a lot of people do that, they figure out, their defects in their character, how they got them defects, why they got them, because sometimes they're hidden. You don't know they have them. You don't know you have them until you know you have to go to the board and you have to tell the board why. Then you start looking at yourself and you start saying, oh yeah, I do have these defects, and this is how I got them, and so now that I know that I have them and how I got them, now I can do something about, ridding myself of those character defects and living with a better moral character, because for me, it came down, and for a lot of guys, it came down to, you have to be more moral, and the whole thing about morality is right and wrong. There is a right and there is a wrong, and you have to choose right every time.
We're all for you, man. Thank you.
So it sounds like Pat was asking a little bit more about, was there some resource you turned to whilst you were in prison to actually find the housing that you're in now as part of that parole package?
Oh yeah. Well, there's while we're in prison, they want us to know that we have a place to live. For the lifers, the board requires that we go straight to a transition home. So while we're in prison, we have to start getting address of the transition homes and telling them, hey, will you accept me in your home if I get parole? And they would write you a recommendation letter, like to the board. And they would say, to the board of parole hearings, we know Joseph, because sometimes you have to fill out a questionnaire for him, And so we know Joseph, we know he's been down this much time. We believe that he has done the work to warrant parole. And so that goes before the parole hearing too.
Did you get accepted into the first place you wrote to, or were there a couple?
I had two of them. I had one that was in San Fernando, because there was a Catholic nun that used to come into all the churches and give little meetings, and she, I wrote to her, and she got me a place. But there's another housing place called the Francisco Homes, and that's run by the Catholic Church also, and so they help out people. But there's just a bunch of them. Like the one I'm at right now, Robert runs it, but these were kind of like sprouted from the STOP, which is funded by the state. It's funded by the Department of Rehabilitation. So because they put the funds forth, people started, creating these little houses because they know they were going to get the funding. And when prisoners came out, like Robert right here, he owns 3 of these houses. Yeah, and when I was over
So once people kind of know how to do this, then they can maybe repeat it. If they want to.
Yeah, when I was in San Fernando, they would accept almost anybody. Well, some of the houses are not really that disciplined because of their funding. Maybe they don't have STOP funding; they got some other kind of funding, and so the requirements are not as strict as far as taking classes while we're here, because we have to take classes. I have a counselor that I have to talk to twice a week, and she makes sure that I'm not like engaging in criminality or criminal thinking or drug behavior. Yeah, but some of the houses people are, they are getting they are getting using drugs in the house and getting drunk and stuff, and it's not a good place to be in those houses.
Yeah.
Pat, was it Susan? Did you have a question?
I did. I'm interested, Joseph, in more. I'm in Washington State, and they eliminated parole, but they are trying to, the prison that I'm on a board for the Department of Correction Religious Advisors, and they're trying to establish better re-entry programs. And my question has to do with how much the prison had connections with where you are and how much preparation they gave you. You mentioned some classes, or, I mean, how did they prepare you, and then what connection do they have with you once you're out?
Well, not much connection once we're out.
Okay.
Most of the prisons I was at, they had a community resource manager, and she worked for the Department of Corrections, or she worked for the prison. But community resource manager, they were responsible for putting forth all the self-help groups. But a lot of if they just provided the spaces in the prison to have the groups, the prisoners are the ones that take care of most of it, because they don't have the funds to hire trainers and stuff. But they'll give us a little curriculum, and prisoners started using this term facilitators, So the inmates would facilitate the groups, and so conversate with a certain curriculum, and sometimes the inmates would write their own curriculum.
Well, our one of our programs called TEACH, which is it's an acronym for teaching each other, and it was the same idea. It started at Clallam Bay Prison, and there's actually a film about this particular man. If you can you get online to films, because this one is called wait, I'll think of it before we're done here.
Also, Susan, you can send me the link, and I'll include it in in our follow-up email.
I will. Yeah. Since I've Been Down, that's what it's called.
Oh, nice.
Okay.
But anyway, so you're saying, what was the last prison? Where were you, Joseph? And then you say there's no connection once you're out, but are there no connections between these halfway houses, the transition houses, the rules at the transition houses?
Well, the way I've seen it is like corrections are just involved in security of the institution.
Okay.
They have a little small branch that tries to do inmate programs, but whenever like emergencies happen or budget shortages happen, the prisoners programs are the first ones that get cut.
Yep.
Yeah. So like when we used to like look at some of the prison programs in Europe, like Germany, we're like, oh wow, look at this! Look at the way Germany does it, or look at the way Canada does it.
Yeah. Way ahead.
Wait a second. Are you saying that you researched Walston Prison? Better ways of being in prison?
Yeah, we would like. Well, I had the impression a while back is like, the system never expected nothing out of us, and I'm like, the system is never going to get anything out of us until they start expecting something out of us, And when they start expecting something, that's what happened in California. They started expecting something out of us, or they gave us an opportunity for us to give something, and a lot of people rose to the occasion and became teachers, and it was interesting. Like when I was in the maximum security, I was in a level 4. And we barely started seeing programs, and we barely started getting hope that, we could go home one day, but we go to these programs. But then when I dropped down to a level 3, and I went where there was a whole bunch of programs. And right when I got to committee, the associate warden tells me, Cabrera, if you're good, you can go home right here. We're giving dates right here. And and that's the first time I heard it in 35 years. That's the first time I've heard something like that, And so when I get on the yard and I start going to all these programs, and everybody's talking about self-help, and everybody knows everything about character defects and everything. And And I'm like, oh, this is a different, there's way more hope on this yard than I seen on the other one. Everybody, and then when people were going to board, everybody's like getting parole dates, and we're like, we've never seen this before, and so now when you go on a parole date, you feel bad if they don't give you parole now because everybody's getting parole, we're like.
Well, you were in prison during, I think, the most massively overcrowded period of time in California, where we got a federal judge, 3 of them, I think, that were like, you can't keep doing this.
Yeah, they had one person dying from 1 person a week dying from medical because the overcrowding just messed up the medical. It made the medical, people couldn't get into medical for ordinary stuff, and they were dying at the rate of 1 a week. So the Supreme Court ordered them to lower the population to 137%, and just a couple of years, they dropped 40,000, and I think they've cut it in half now. It's amazing to me that's happened.
Hey, Joseph.
Yeah.
Question about, you said you were required to visit with your counselor a couple of times a week, and then you said that you're required to visit with your parole officer once a month. I was just wondering, and now you're trying to, in addition to going to school, you're trying to be employed and work some. My question is, if you were to kind of ramp up on the hours and you were, approaching something over 30 hours a week, just for example, would it be difficult to make those required meetings that are probably during the day if you were working, many hours a day type thing? I'm just wondering, because I know, like you said, you're not going to make a mistake, so you're going to do the things that you have to do. And are those things at some point maybe going to hold you back from, working full time? I'm just wondering.
They might. That's a good question. My parole agent has told me a couple of times, if you have to work that day, don't worry about calling me in. Don't worry about coming in and go to work. We'll find a day during the month where we can meet. But if I'm working but if I'm working 5 days a week, then
which day is that? That's right.
Yeah, one day I'm gonna have to miss. Like the other day, I could have worked the 30th, which was yesterday, right? He had me go see him. And I could have worked yesterday.
Yep.
But I had to go see him.
Yep. And then and then the counselor is twice a week, you said, so that can be even more so, right? Because that's probably a requirement of your parole, right?
Yeah. Yeah. She says that, you know what, I know you have to go to work. I know you got things to do. We'll try to fit it in whenever you can fit it in. But then she's real busy too. She works at a hospital. She works at a hospital. Yeah.
I was just curious.
Well, I think we're at just about time. Thank you so much, Joseph. Thank you, David. If anybody wants to turn on their cameras that doesn't have them, we can all do like a little thank you wave and all of that. It's really